Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really try to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're embarking on a truly fascinating journey.
Yeah, into a work that's pretty unusual and profound, too. Parnaso de Além-Túmulo. It's a poetry collection, first published in Brazil way back in 1932.
Right, but this isn't just your average poetry book, is it?
No, not at all. The extraordinary claim here is that these verses were actually dictated by, well, a whole bunch of deceased poets.
Dictated through someone.
Exactly, through a young medium who was, importantly, relatively uneducated. So our mission today really is to unpack the story behind this book.
And explore the insights it offers, because they sound quite surprising.
Deeply insightful, yeah. Perspectives on life, death, human experience, things like that.
Okay, poetry from beyond the grave. It sounds almost unbelievable. This deep dive should give you a shortcut, hopefully, to understanding what seems like an impossible feat.
Yeah, hopefully filled with some aha moments and maybe some surprising facts about, human potential, the unseen world, perhaps.
All right, let's unpack this together. So to really get a handle on Parnaso de Além-Túmulo, we absolutely have to start with the person at the center of it all. The enigma, really.
Francisco Cândido Xavier, often just called Chico Xavier.
Right. His life story, from what our sources say, seems crucial for setting the stage. What was his background like?
Well, Francisco Cândido Xavier, he was born in 1910, a place called Pedro Leopoldo in Minas Gerais, Brazil.
Okay.
And his early life, it was marked by real poverty, hardship too. He was orphaned quite young, just 5, when his mother died.
Wow, 5 years old.
Yeah. And his formal education was extremely limited, just primary school. So he learned, the basics of arithmetic, a bit of history, his own language.
And the source specifically mentions something about his culture or training.
It does. It notes he was without great culture and poetic training, which is key, obviously.
That immediately raises an eyebrow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does someone with, let's say, such limited formal schooling get involved in something so literary?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It kind of challenges our usual ideas about where art comes from, or even knowledge itself.
Exactly. That's the core insight right there, right from the start. The sources seem to suggest it forces a reevaluation of authorship, maybe hinting that creative power might flow from somewhere else.
Somewhere unseen.
Potentially, far beyond just individual smarts or formal training. Now, the start of his mediumistic development, it's traced back to a family crisis.
Okay.
In May 1927, one of his sisters had what the source calls a terrible obsession. Something conventional medicine just couldn't fix. It says it proved impotent.
Yeah.
So this led the family to seek help elsewhere. They found a friend who's a convinced spiritist.
And that encounter somehow triggered Xavier's abilities.
That's what led to his mediumistic faculty starting to develop, yes.
No, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The actual how. How did he describe producing these poems? Was it like sitting down and writing normally?
Not according to him. He specifically emphasized that he used no intellectual effort when he was writing.
No effort. What did it feel like then?
He reported different sensations. Sometimes like a vigorous hand pushing his own. Other times, almost like he was reading and copying from some kind of immaterial volume.
Reading from an invisible book?
Sort of. Or sometimes he said it felt like someone was dictating right into his ears.
Were there physical feelings too?
Yes, definitely. He mentioned electric fluids in his arm, incalculable vibrations in his brain, sometimes even feeling like he was temporarily out of his body.
Wow.
And importantly, he stated these poems arrived spontaneously. They were never evoked.
Never evoked. That feels significant. Does the source explain why that distinction matters? What does that imply about where this was coming from?
Yeah, it emphasizes that point. It wasn't him actively trying to summon spirits or ask for messages.
It just happened.
It was presented as a spontaneous connection, which, the source argues, adds to the feeling of authenticity.
Right. And remember, he was only 21 when this book first came out.
Exactly, just 21. And the source highlights that he'd often come across words, vocables of etymology, he didn't know.
Complex words and their origins.
Right. Or facts and resources of hermeneutics, figures of rhetoric, he was completely ignorant of.
So sophisticated ways of interpreting texts, advanced poetic techniques, things he hadn't studied.
Precisely. And beyond that, he received stuff on scientific theories, doctrines, philosophical ideas he'd never even heard of.
From authors he'd never read.
Authors he'd never read, concepts totally new to him. The book's preface actually uses this exact point as evidence. It asks, how could an almost adolescent, without that great culture and poetic training, produce material this complex?
It's a compelling question. But given this extraordinary gift or ability, what about the personal side? Did it make him famous, wealthy?
No, quite the opposite, actually. The source really emphasizes his simplicity, how industrious he was.
So he didn't profit from it?
It specifically notes he never benefited from the copyrights of his vast mediumistic production. Never took the money.
How many books were we talking about?
Over 110 works published through his mediumship, some translated into multiple languages.
And still no personal gain.
He just remained dedicated to his mission. So this deep dive, it's really about the message in the work, not about the messenger getting rich or famous.
Okay, so let's turn to the book itself then. Parnaso de Além-Túmulo, Parnassus from Beyond the Tomb. Love that title.
It's evocative, isn't it?
It contains a preface, you mentioned, by M. Quental, described as a respected spiritist and autodidact.
Yes, self-taught, but well-regarded.
What did Quental have to say about this collection? What was his take?
Well, his preface basically positions the book as really significant proof, or maybe a light shining from the spirit world.
Proof of survival after death.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
He explicitly compares Parnaso to another similar work, De País da Luz, from the Land of Light.
And how did Parnaso compare?
Quental argued that Parnasso's focus on poetry, on verse, makes it more original, more difficult, more precious as an indicator of authorial authenticity.
That's interesting. Why would poetry be seen as more authentic than, say, prose received the same way?
The argument goes that poetry, with its really complex forms, its rhythms, meters, specific styles, it's just much harder to fake.
Harder than prose?
Yeah, or harder to unconsciously reproduce, especially for someone like Xavier, who lacked that formal literary training.
Okay, I can see that logic.
And the preface asserts that the book features poets from both Brazil and Portugal, and their distinct literary styles. Romanticism, contrarrealismo, Parnassianism, symbolism. These varied forms actually objectively affirm the survival of their interpreters.
How so?
Because the claim is their unique styles are recognizable, even coming through the medium.
So the idea is if you read a poem in the book attributed to Casimiro de Abreu,
You should feel like you're actually reading Casimiro de Abreu.
even though Chico Xavier wrote it down.
Exactly. The preface gives specific examples. It says, it is reading Casimiro and reliving Primaveras. That was his famous work.
Okay.
It is reciting Castro Alves and feeling Escumas Suchuantes. Another key work. It is declaiming Junqueiro and remembering A Morte de Don João.
So we're calling the specific feel of each poet's major work.
Precisely. It is phrasing Augusto dos Santos and evoking you. It's presented as clear evidence that the individual styles of these poets are shining through.
Despite the medium not knowing their work beforehand.
Despite Xavier's admitted lack of prior knowledge of these specific authors, their poems, or even the literary movements they belong to, this is really the linchpin of the argument for the book's authenticity.
Okay, that sets the stage incredibly well. Now let's get into the real substance, the wisdom coming from these diverse spirits, as the source calls them. This is the core of the deep dive, right?
Absolutely. What are the big themes, the key messages emerging from these poems?
What stands out?
Well, a really predominant theme, maybe the most impactful, is about the nature of death and the afterlife.
How is it portrayed? Is it scary? Final?
Quite the opposite, usually. Poets like A.G., that's Abel Gomes Amadei, Casimiro Cunha, Castro Alves, Fagundes Varela, they consistently talk about death not as an end, but as a liberation, sometimes a sweet sleep, or even a luminous angel opening doors to new, brighter realms.
So a transition.
A transformation, yeah.
Yeah.
A return to the Creator's light, often framed within the context of multiple lives.
Multiple lives. Interesting. So death isn't the great equalizer that just ends everything. It's more like a revealer. A new beginning, perhaps.
That seems to be the message. A revealer, yes. But it's important to note, the experience isn't described as universally blissful immediately after death.
Oh, how so?
Well, some poets, like Antero de Quental and Batista Ceballos, they describe continued suffering, remorse after death.
For what?
For unresolved issues, basically. Wrong choices made in life, things left undone or done badly.
So there are consequences even after death.
It seems so. As one poet, Raul de Leon, puts it, even after death, the soul works, seeking the heaven of its hopes, and the infinite struggle continues.
The struggle continues.
Yeah, it highlights a key insight. The physical body dies, sure, but the spirit, the consciousness, endures. And so do the consequences, the lessons tied to its actions.
That raises a big question then, about suffering here in this life. If the struggle continues, what's the point of pain now? Is it just meaningless?
Not at all, according to these poets. They offer a profoundly different take on it. A really powerful recurring insight is about the purpose of suffering. They often use the Portuguese word dor.
Dor, meaning pain or suffering.
Exactly. And many poets, especially Alto de Souza and Cruz de Souza, they actually personify dor.
They make suffering into a character.
Almost, yeah. Like a divine force, an angel of redemption, sometimes a sculptor that purifies the soul, redeems it.
Wow, that's a strong image, a sculptor.
Isn't it? Rodrigues de Abreu shares a personal story in one poem. He talks about how dor, how pain, stripped away all his earthly glories, his pride.
It led to something better.
Ultimately, yes. It led him to comprehend Jesus' presence, his love. Pain acted as a healing force for him, paradoxically.
That's counterintuitive.
It is. And Augusto dos Anjos, another poet, he suggests suffering is actually the health of pleasures, the hymn of light.
The health of pleasures.
Maybe meaning it puts pleasures in perspective, or purifies them. He says it leads to the eternal dawn of good. So suffering is seen as this catalyst.
A catalyst for spiritual health.
For growth.
Exactly. Something that strips away the illusions, the attachments of the world to reveal deeper truths.
Right.
That's a really profound reframe, isn't it?
It really is. Seeing dor not just as pain, but as this active, almost benevolent force for purification. It certainly challenges how we usually think about hardship.
Definitely.
Okay, so it sounds like a tough path, but one seen as necessary for spiritual evolution. What other insights do these spirits offer about just human existence, our daily lives?
Well, flowing from that, there's a very strong critique of materialism and earthly vanities, hypocrisy.
Okay, tell me more.
Poets like Alfredo Nora, Álvaro Teixeira de Macedo, they just dismiss worldly stuff. Wealth, fame, physical pleasure as fleeting illusions. Dust, one calls it.
Dust.
Oh, yeah. And Arcro Azevedo, he offers some sharp social commentary, satirical poems.
About society. Yeah, exposing the moral failures, the hypocrisy he saw in, quote, elegant society, contrasting how people appeared outwardly with their inner corruption.
So a critique of surface appearances?
Very much so. The world itself is often depicted quite starkly. A valley of tears or a prison of flesh.
Highlighting the suffering that comes from being too attached to material things.
Exactly. That attachment is seen as a source of suffering.
What about organized religion? We touched on Jesus, but does the collection talk about the church institutions? Is there a unified view?
Yes. The source material we have definitely includes sections with a sharp critique of organized religion, specifically the church as an institution.
Okay, what kind of critique?
Well, for example, poems attributed to Junqueiro, like Father João, and to a priest, they really lambasted the church.
For what reasons?
For focusing too much on dogma, on wealth, on power, for suppressing truth and reason as they saw it.
And contrasting that with
Jesus' original teachings, love, humility. The poems go so far as to accuse the church of turning priests into rags of misery and obscuring truth through simony.
Simony, like selling spiritual things.
Yeah, the corrupt practice of selling church offices or spiritual goods. But the work is careful to emphasize that the source of truth, Jesus, is separate from these institutional abuses.
That's an important distinction.
It is. And just to be clear, this is the content from the source material itself. It represents a viewpoint within the work, not, our endorsement of it.
Understood. So if materialism is dust and dogma is criticized, what's presented as the alternative, the path forward, according to these messages?
The alternative, the path forward, consistently points towards the importance of love, charity, and the gospel.
Love and charity.
Yes. Poets like Amaral Ornelas and Marta, they portray love often capitalized as the fundamental divine force, the thing underpinning the entire universe.
And charity, caridade in Portuguese.
Caridade, yes. It's presented as this universal force, non-discriminatory, something that heals suffering, brings light. It embraces everyone, regardless of their social status or belief system.
A universal embrace.
Right. And the Evangelium, the gospel, that's consistently affirmed too, as the eternal message of truth, a path of peace and happiness.
Like a guide.
A guide, a ladder, one poem says, connecting humanity to higher spiritual realms, guiding the way to redemption.
So this whole spiritual journey, these multiple lives, the lessons from suffering, the focus on love, does it all lead to some kind of grand conclusion about where humanity is heading? our destiny?
Yes, very much so. There's a strong recurring emphasis on spiritual evolution and rebirth.
Evolution.
Continuous evolution.
Yeah.
Poets like Castro Alves and Casimiro Cunha really highlight this idea of multiple lives being part of a process towards sublime perfection.
And it's not just humans.
No, it seems everything in the universe, from the tiniest flower to the biggest star, is portrayed as being on this constant journey upwards. Ascension.
Towards what?
Towards greater spiritual understanding, a higher state of being. So this perspective, it frames our human lives with all the struggles, the learning.
As just one part of something much bigger.
Exactly. Part of an immense ongoing journey of growth and transformation. It's a message that our current life, this existence, and it's really just one chapter in a much, much larger story that's still unfolding.
Wow. This deep dive into Parnaso de Além-Túmulo has certainly given us a fascinating glimpse into something truly unique. A literary and spiritual phenomenon.
It really is remarkable. From this uneducated medium, apparently channeling incredibly complex poetry.
To these profound insights about suffering, death, human purpose, it really does challenge our conventional ideas, doesn't it? About where knowledge even comes from.
And maybe what lies beyond what we can immediately see or perceive.
We've seen how these nuggets of knowledge, supposedly from deceased poets, distill some pretty complex ideas. Death as transformation.
Suffering as a catalyst for redemption.
And the universal power of love and charity as these core guiding forces.
Yeah, it suggests that our lives here on Earth, with all the stuff we get caught up in, the vanities, the hardships, they're maybe just steps on a much larger evolutionary path.
It absolutely invites you, the listener, to think about not just what you know, but how you know it.
And maybe even who or what might be guiding your own understanding, subtly perhaps.
So think about it. What invisible hand might be influencing your thoughts? What little electric fluids of intuition are you maybe sensing in your own life?
And maybe how might embracing the suffering, the door, the challenges you encounter, how might that lead to your own luminous landscapes?
A deeper connection, perhaps, to the kind of universal truths presented in this truly remarkable collection, something to mull over until our next deep dive.